Bona tarda a tothom. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Margaret Foster. I'm the academic director of Elisava and also the coordinator of the platform Design for City Making at Elisava with Ezio Manzini. Thank you all for being here today, attending this nice and meaningful webinar. This is part of a series of webinars we expect to launch as part of the third year of the Design for City Making platform launched by Ezio 3 years ago. As we all know, the COVID crisis has raised many issues and conflicts related to our understanding of interaction and care with each other. And of course, this is embracing new ways to approach this key issue of our cities. Nurturing communities of care, a pathway to designing more resilient cities, has been co-hosted and organized by Desis Lab Elisava, especially Julia Benini, who I deeply want to thank, and the Care Lab, and especially Lekshmy, Parameswaran, who I also want to thank a lot for pushing this webinar to happen and to reflect all together how we might reimagine and redesign new ways to nurture care through community-based models that can make our cities more resilient. This session will have lots of important people participating. First of all, we'll start with a conversation between Hilary Cottam and Professor Ezio Manzini that will later lead to some showcases of different case studies or examples related to communities of care in Barcelona, Trieste, Rotterdam, and Singapore, to finally wrap up with a final discussion on all the threats and open horizons this field has in terms of design. So closing here, this short opening, I would really like to stress the importance of design as a key agent in city making. And this assumption, we want to push strongly that at the same level as urban planners, architects, economists, or sociologists, designers have a role and have a way to approach the city with great, precise, and clear projects that can lead to systemic and global changes. So thanks again to all the organizers, and I directly give the path to Hilary and Ezio.
Is not Lesh before?
I am me.
Yes, Lesh before.
To Lesh, sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Albert. And welcome everyone. I'm Lekshmy, I'm from the Care Lab. And I have to say, this is like the highlight of my year to co-host the event with Elisava and to be with you all today. I'm going to welcome all our participants. I'm checking we have, it just turned to 100 people online out there with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we've got some coverage from New York to Singapore with some pit stops in between, which is wonderful. Very briefly, just to introduce our team who are going to be joining me and guiding us through the next couple of hours together. Albert already did a shout out to Professor Julia Benini, Professor of Service Design at Elisava, and my partner in crime on this particular topic and on this day. Julia will be leading the brainstorm that we do towards the end of the session, where we map out some of the future challenges in this space, as well as helping reflect and wrap up on the debate. And you can see Irene, Nuri, and Laszlo, our backstage crew from the Care Lab, who are going to be working hard in the background, just making sure everything runs smooth, also capturing all of your questions and comments. So I'm going to keep encouraging you to pop those into the chat, and we can bring some of them into the debate with our wonderful speakers. And finally, we are going to be building a visual map of some of the main questions and challenges that come up and some of the ideas that we'll have together this afternoon. So that's something to look forward to right at the very end. So I have to say we were really heartened to find so many of you interested out there to also reflect on this topic of the future of caring communities and how they can help build more compassionate and resilient cities. So our intention is really to start up this conversation today, to take it public. It's just the beginning, and see how we might define together what are some of the most interesting and important research questions that are related to this topic. Before we dive in, we will be talking about care, relationships, and this term called proximity. And we thought that since we'll refer to that through the webinar, let's all get on the same page and understand how it is we think about these terms before we begin. So let me just say, we see care as made up of everyday acts of compassion. It can be amongst our loved ones, people in the communities, and the environment, in which we live. And as we were speaking, relationships obviously lie at the very heart of care, because ultimately care is about reciprocity, it's about empathy, and about mutual trust. Because we're looking at these topics in the frame of city making, the idea of proximity comes up. And what do we mean by proximity? There's two main aspects to keep in mind, at least this is how we're seeing it right now. There's this aspect of feeling close and having a sense of connection and belonging to a community. Can call it relational proximity, but there's also physically being close together in order to be able to care for one another in a particular place. Now we're defining these communities of care as networks of people, professionals or citizens who contribute to carrying out care activities in a specific place. Now that can be a kampong in Singapore, it can be a neighborhood, it can be a superblock in Barcelona. We're going to see lots of examples later today. And our hypothesis is, if we could foster these communities of care, we believe we can turn proximity, this closeness, into the quality of intimacy, which of course feeds care and relationships. So we're going to jump into the conversation. I will stop talking and hand over very soon to Hilary and Ezio. We want to encourage you to follow the conversation also in social media. And so for that reason, we've got these two hashtags up here. I think you see it at the bottom of the slide, so please make some noise. And to kickstart, let me introduce you to two experts on these particular topics. It's our pleasure to have here today Dr. Hilary Cottam and Professor Ezio Manzini. So Ezio has been working in the field of design for sustainability with a focus on social innovation for several decades. He is the president of the Desis network and collaborates with several design schools worldwide, including Elisava, and I believe we have Parsons Design School on the line too today. He's the author of the seminal book, Politics of the Everyday. So you want to make a note of that and go out and get your hands on it. We also have Hilary Cottam, an internationally acclaimed social entrepreneur working with communities and governments to design collaborative, affordable solutions to big social challenges. She's the author of the acclaimed book, Radical Help on the Future of Welfare, and her TED Talk on the future of social systems has had over 750,000 views. So I have to especially thank Hilary for squeezing us into your crazy schedule at the end of a crazy year. We have you for the next hour, which is a pleasure, so we're going to make the most of it. Before I hand over to Ezio, just to remind you guys, everyone listening, please post your questions and comments in the chat. Mark it for all panelists and attendees so we can pick up a few of them towards the end. So Ezio, over to you.
Thank you so much. So I'm also so happy to be here with so many friends. Some of them also are my teacher, or not only friend, even though they are younger than me. And I'm so happy now to have this conversation with Hilary that I know since 20 years now. And it's a pleasure to see, at least digitally. So I want to be short. We have only 30 minutes. And in these 30 minutes, we'd like to, in some way, extract, even if extract is not sustainable in general, but in this case, I hope she will forgive if I use this term. We want to extract from long Hilary experiences on everything that is related to the power of relationships, something that help us to better understand what is, as Lesh has already said, the focus of our discussion, that is on the crossroad in between relationship care and proximity. And we, for some reason that now I do not go inside, we want in this case, in this specific webinar, to look to this very complex mesh of interactions, moving from the point of view of a locality, of the place, and of what could be the meaning of proximity. So the three questions that I prepared are more or less different zooming in this topic. And but I want to ask Hilary, given that this could be a little bit specific, but I think that will be very useful for everybody, starting from myself and all the audience, if in answering, you start from where you are in your journey as a researcher, professional, writer, and whatever you are. You have a long journey on this issue, and so where are you now? I know your last book, that is Radical Help, and I also have access to your last report, or at least what I think is last report, that is called Welfare 5.0, Why We Need a Revolution in Social Welfare and How to Do It. So I think that this is, at least for me, a fantastic framework in which to put our discussion. So given that, the more specific first question is exactly as I said, on locality. I only will anticipate half a minute consideration. Many people of us are working on the local dimension of what we are doing since long time. But something happened in the last, in this terrible year that in some way pushed the notion and the interest toward locality at a broader scale, and also some people that seem to have forgot that we are a physical people with physical body existing in physical space, whatever other connection we can have in our interactions. We are physical and we are located. And so the discussion about the local and the meaning of the local came on the front. And therefore, I think we have to take this opportunity to restart the conversation, putting this point as one of the previous one, or the most important one. And the question is, how do you see the local that we talk about and the local that we talk about today? And what are, in your experience, the relationship of the most important, or the most crucial relationships in between the local and the relationships and the possibility to create community of care? Thank you.
Well, Ezio, it's always such a pleasure to see you. I'm so excited to have this chance to talk to you, and I'm honoured to be here. I think what's happening in Barcelona, what Barcelona is exploring, is so exciting. Obviously, with design at the centre, as Albert explained, I mean, I think this is really exciting, and how to share and talk in the little time we've got when there's so much we could say. I mean, I think places, as you said, about the physical nature of us, if we need to be taken care of, this is about our physicality. I also think that meaning is something very, very important to us, our sense of belonging at a very local level, but also kind of ecologically at a planetary level. And so, I mean, this, I think, is the century of meaning, and that meaning also is expressed in physical place. So that's another dimension of care and connection that I think is important. And then thirdly, something we might come on to talk about in your later questions is that I think time is really, really important in what we're going to explore today. And, you know, I mean, you know, Ezio, that my latest work is framed in the idea of technology revolutions, that we're in the fifth revolution, which is the digital revolution. We're moving out of the mass production revolution. And of course, one of the things that happened in the mass production revolution was we tried to put everything, including care, into an idea of factory time, you know, clocking on, clocking off. Of course, care is like a gift economy. It's a completely different, it's like Kairos time, it's completely different. And this also has to be expressed in place, which we could come back to. But just to be concrete for a moment, so my book, Radical Help, is a story of 10 years of making in communities across Britain, asking whether we could relook at the welfare systems we inherited, the systems, the frameworks, the design we inherited from the end of the Second World War. which I think were amazing. They completely transformed across Western Europe. They transformed our life chances. But I think that those systems and those ways of thinking, which are very centralized, very far from the local actually, have run out of time. So Radical Help is a story about, could we rethink care, flourishing, cradle to grave? And the fifth experiment in the book, I talk about 5 experiments, starting with family life and ending with the fifth, which is about the latter third of our life, as you know, is really the experiment we did that thought about how could we look after one another? How could the third stage of our life be the richest stage of our life? We know that sort of in Buddhist teaching, for example, the whole of life is just preparing for this stage. But in Western policy, we don't think of it, we don't talk of it like that at all. We talk about things like age bombs and demographic crisis. So the question was, how could we turn that on its head? And we built this, I don't really want to call it a service, but it was a form of service called Circles, which was open to anybody over the age of 50. And it was a mix between a social club, 0800, which means a free phone number you could call for immediate support. And so a concierge service mixed in, open to everybody over the age of 50. And it's had, you know, the sort of measures on the first 10,000 users are incredibly successful, you know, a sort of reduced demand on formal expensive services. To give you an example, people don't visit their doctor for a chat because they now are no longer lonely. But I think what's really important about that example, why I want to bring it up in the context of what you're talking about today, is something like Circle, in which everybody is both a member and a helper, only works at a local level. So you're only going to join that kind of organization if you can actually see it, touch it, you know the other members. You're not going to contribute your time, your resource, whether it's your money or whether it's your ideas, to something which is very far from you. So I think the success of really rethinking away from a sort of factory system of care to a community system of care was all about local place. And can I just share with you 2 other examples that I think are really exciting? Because I think when we think about care now, we have to think about a continuum. So in the context of today, I mean, I think one of the most exciting experiments in care in Britain is something called Shared Lives, which has been started by somebody called Alex Fox. And basically, he has asked families to open their lives to others, whether that's an older person or whether it's an adult that needs some form of care. And thousands of families have signed up. It's been incredibly successful and shows again that if we put relationships on the front foot, we think about this as a human relational rather than a sort of transactional service, something very different happens. And then in Leeds, which perhaps has some of the strongest care in Britain, there's been a very successful experiment, which again is I think touches on the experience in Barcelona, which is that the head of care in Leeds, so the head of the municipal government in Leeds, said that he would like communities to care for one another. And so he asked Leeds, which is a big northern city, if they would like to organise themselves into communities. And these communities were self-defined. So in some places they're quite big areas, and in some places they're just a couple of streets. But then what happened in Leeds was that on 10-year cycles, financing was given to these communities so that they could care for others. So it was a really radical experience in local democracy, because you didn't have to apply for the money. You didn't have to kind of spend all your time looking for money. You had long time horizons, so you could really think about how to care for each other. And it's been really successful. Leeds has the best outcomes in the UK for children growing up. But also now, and this took a long time, it took a long time for him to persuade formal services, the social workers, to give over their old people to these more community type feelings because they were worried about risk. But it's a work of decades, this, but it has really transformed what's happening in Leeds. So I just mentioned these 3 examples because I think, just to say that from my own practical community-based experience here in the UK, we can see that if we think about what we can touch and feel, and we think of it at that human level of scale, which is the local, we can do really different things, which are unimaginable if we're sitting in the office of the Minister of Care, who can't possibly think in this way, you know, in a centralized department.
Fantastic, thank you. And there are so many threads that could be developed, in particular the one also related to the different timing. So the time of our society, the time of the city, how it is organized, and the idea that care as a timing that is totally different from the modern one. And but I want to stay on what was my program, and my program is to have a zooming now on what are the quality of this place. So you did these 3 beautiful examples, and at least myself, I know a little bit the place, and maybe also some other in the audience know them, so I can figure out. But for sure, the possibility to have something else, for instance, the circle, I think that could be very different if you are in a place that is a neighborhood that's sufficiently dense and diversified in sense of functions, or if you are in a desertified place where there are only a dormitory for people that commute during the day, or only mainly business center or whatever. So I wanted to discuss with you and have your opinion about a kind of a thread in the policy making for the urban policy that we can see in Barcelona. And this is one of the reasons why we are talking about this, because in some way this webinar is physically it's mostly in Barcelona, even though it is digital. And this program that is called the Superillas, Super Blocks, that it will be explained better afterward by Lluis Torrens in particular, but now I wanted to anticipate with you to have some feedback. For who do not know it, it's a program that in some way take neighborhoods, try to free from cars, and afterward in the giving back the streets to the people, organize the streets as a kind of platform in which many other activity can happen, included, of course, first of all, the service related to care and to health. So if we have this kind of condition, there are some possibility to create a kind of, because we are physical, so we have to move. The time that we spend in moving from one place to the other make the difference in the possibility to create a community of care. Therefore, my question is, this kind of programs as we have in Barcelona, but even though in Barcelona, probably in my view at least, is the most clear and advanced, now it's a thread that we can find in many other places. For instance, in this moment, I am in Milano because we are working on some similar program in Milano. In Paris has been started a program by the mayor of Paris that's called the 15-minute city. But I know that also, for instance, I know that enough well in Seoul, they had some program that was related to reorganize the services in the sense of the temporality. And I read that also in Shanghai, there are some programs that are called the 15-minute city in Shanghai that is quite challenging. So I want to ask you if this thread that in my view is very promising with all the limits and the problems is very promising, could be one step in what you call the revolution of the social welfare. So it could be a kind of coincidence in between the two.
I really think it is, and that's why I think it's so exciting. I mean, I think that one of the reasons I really like it is because, I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but I strongly feel that when we design welfare services for this century, for the 21st century, it's in fact not really about services at all. It's about thinking in a really integrated way. How do we design everything from the physical spaces that encourage whether we actually, do we have benches where we might have unforeseen meetings with people? Do we have, these are all things we don't have in the UK, for example, benches are designed out so there's no crime. Do we have toilets, which mean that older people can inhabit the space? No, in the UK we don't have them anymore because it's considered too expensive to have public toilets. So then we have very expensive care services instead. So the thing is that absolutely everything about the neighbourhood is about a caring society, which I would differentiate from care services. So care services are the spine, but really we want to design our societies and our neighborhoods to a point where we don't actually need a service. I would say service last, but take care of everyone. So the caring society is something else. And I think that can only really happen at the neighborhood level, because it's only at the neighborhood level that we can have those connections with each other. I mean, when I talk about relationships, I think that in this century, you know this, Ezio, and probably many of people listening know this, but sociologists differentiate between the bridging relationships with people who are not like us and the bonding relationships, which are with people who are like us. To have caring societies, we need to build in every single aspect of how we think about the city. We need to build these bridging relationships, because those are the ones that help us with everything from kind of our learning to finding work, but especially with care. Because to go back to the experiment, our circles that I talked about, when we built communities of older people, if you have a community that is 10 people in a wheelchair, and you say, well, we want to go to an art gallery. Well, that's really complicated because we need 2 minivans and it's very difficult to get there, and then it's very difficult to get around. if we have a society that is like a community of circles which is full of all kinds of people, then we have maybe 2 of our members who have wheelchairs, and the other 8 are like, well, that's okay, I can put you in my car, I can take you there, I can walk there with you. You have all these different possibilities when you begin to build bridging relationships. And I suppose it's just at a very simple level quite hard for me to think about how you can do that if it's not at the neighborhood level, where we actually encounter each other, build the relationships. I mean, you talked about horizontal density earlier, Ezio, when we were chatting before. And I mean, that's just such a brilliant phrase, because I think if we think about the 20th century systems, they are all vertical. They're command and control, they're siloed, they're sending messages top to bottom. The neighborhood is all about the horizontal. And that new horizontality, which has professionals, but has them interwoven with, you know, different forms of neighbor and shopkeepers and everything else, that is the kind of caring society that we can build. And it's kind of getting that sort of mycelium, that kind of basin first. And then the other thing that, I mean, there's so much, I don't know what we could pick up on, but in the Welfare 5.0 paper that I talk about, you know, I talk about how in this century also we need to move away from a design blueprint to a design code. And I think designers are really used to kind of the idea of a kind of code that is then reinterpreted in place. So I think what we're looking for here are like, what are the principles that enable it to be that each super block is a caring super block, or however you would call it. But then how is that reinterpreted and made in that place by the people of that place, so that it's kind of owned and used and feels yours. So this kind of switch from the sort of design blueprint to the design code is really important, and I think can only happen at this neighborhood level. And then I think that we could also talk a little bit about time, because again, things can be done at the time, in a time level. One of the reasons that we have to make care a profession is because if we have to go and have a job or leave our children and commute to the other side of the city, then we can't take care. We know that. So this comes back in. But the other thing you talk a little bit about, maybe I think there's an implication in your question about, well, this could be good for Barcelona because it's really dense, but it wouldn't be good for, you know, another place that is rural. And I think that if I think about back to the experience of our circles, it's definitely true that it's much harder to start these kinds of communities of connection in rural areas. But one of the things that, I mean, you know, in the book I talk about, in Radical Help, I talk about what worked, but I also talk quite a lot about what failed and what we learned from what failed. And I think one of the things that we learned in particular was that for these kinds of community of connection to take root, they need a wider infrastructure. And that wider infrastructure isn't actually just physical. So the circles, we started 10 circles, this support for older people, and some thrived and some didn't. The ones that didn't thrive, it wasn't about density, actually. It was about, did it go into a sort of organizational ecology where culturally people understood this and wanted to nurture it? So in one particular municipality, I'll call just where it was a local authority, a council in the British sense, they wanted a circle literally because they knew it would save them money. It would take people out of formal care services and it would save them a lot of money, because our circles save a lot of money. And that circle failed because it didn't have anything to connect to, kind of in a sort of emotional, cultural, organizational way. So that was much more important actually than the sort of physicality of the block. Although I don't want to kind of discount the physicality of the block, but I think that this sort of more cultural idea of relationships in a cultural sense was more important, really.
Yeah, but if I can insist one moment on this, we always say that relations cannot be designed, but you can create conditions in which it's more probable. So, of course, what is the core is the quality of the relationships, as you said, but what you can promote, you cannot change directly the mind of people, but you can create conditions in which it's more possible that, given the quality of the space, the way in which things are organized, is more possible that people meet each other, meet in a good mood, and maybe start a conversation. And start
absolutely. And I mean, absolutely. And that's why I think actually the physical planning element of the neighborhood, and you've got these beautiful pictures of lots of spaces for people to speak and encounter each other when we started. But also it reminds me of something I want to say, which goes back to your very, you opened talking about the pandemic and how we've seen the locality. So one thing that's been really interesting, I think, in this pandemic is that we have it's absolutely clear that sort of centralized things that have been organized from a distance, whether it's our food shops or our hospitals, have failed us, whereas things that have been locally organized by local people have been extremely effective. But there's another layer to that, which is in the UK, we had this experience that right at the beginning, our Prime Minister said that he would like to have a national volunteer service that would help our National Health Service. And hundreds of thousands of people signed up to this volunteer service. Everybody wanted to help. And no volunteer was called on to help. Nobody wanted to use it. On the other side, what we had in the UK, which has been replicated all over Europe and the US, was we had WhatsApp groups at the level of the street and the village. Of course, we have one in my street. And everybody used these to take care of people who were on their own, to find somebody's medicines, to cook them a supper, to share the bread flour when the bread flour was missing, like whatever it was. And so I think this is also absolutely fundamental to this idea of relationships, is that if you set up at some central service and you say, you know, everybody's on a database, and if you want a lift from hospital, you can call this national database and we'll find you somebody, nobody participates because it's too far from us. It feels like something is being done to us rather than that we own it. But if we set up a WhatsApp group, hey, we're all here. It's not like, you know, Ezio, you need help and I feel sorry for you, so you don't really want to tell me that you need help. It's a completely different dynamic. And that is what I think is at the heart of this, and that can only happen at this very local level for all the other problems. I mean, we could have another conversation tomorrow about what some of the challenges might be, but this is definitely the richness in what you're proposing here, I think.
Yeah, maybe we can go a little bit more in depth, because this was also the third question that I wanted to raise. You already said during the pandemic, that it was 30 minutes or 20 minutes?
No, I think we need like a whole other webinar. There's so much to discuss.
Yes, sorry. I made a mistake. It was 30 minutes.
There's one, no, only because we have a question from our audience out there, and I do want to give
So we finish the conversation now. Let me only say, yes, in some way, Hilary already answered to what was theoretically my third question. That was about if this very fast change of behavior of many people moving toward digital services could be good or could be bad, or how we have to see it. And you already said that there are maybe some very simple digital devices that can be help not to spread the people in the digital space, but to bring back people together, as in the case of the WhatsApp group for the street. So maybe we can go on in the discussion.
But can I also just say one more thing about this? And but also I think what's really important about the digital revolution, well, any technology revolution enables us to look at things in the past and reinvent them for now. So usually if you look historically, you see that things that have been cast aside get rethought. And I think that one of the things we're seeing also really strongly is a re-interest in cooperatives at every kind of level, which is part of your horizontality that you're talking about, that enables us to take ideas that perhaps didn't work so well in one form of economy, but we can now reinvent. And for me, that's what's exciting about the digital. It's helping us. It's like the networked mindset. It's not, I mean, WhatsApp has been useful in this pandemic, but it isn't about the app or the kind of technologies. It's that what is common sense is now framed in a completely different way, which opens up, you know, the ideas of care, proximity, nurture in the way that Lesh was talking about. It opens up the physical space in the way you're talking about, which I think is really exciting. But I will be quiet for now because we could say so much.
No, I thank you so much, Hilary. There are so many things to discuss. Maybe some questions will arrive now, and I leave the floor to Lesh.
Thank you both. Just one question we got from Zong Han Lee, and I want to ask to Hilary and see how you can you give us like your first line answer on this. I think it's really interesting because apart from the elements that could enable this connection between people, he's asking, how will we build caring communities when in really big cities, neighbors don't even know each other? And are we looking at changing attitudes here before we can actually start the act of caring?
Well, this is a very complex question. And I think perhaps one of the really wonderful things, I mean, I don't know the context geographically in which the question is being asked, but, you know, I live in a central London neighbourhood. One thing that's happened, like many London neighbourhoods, is we've all got to know each other. And that, in fact, is not going to go away. Once you've kind of, you know, had a chat with your neighbour, you're not just going to kind of walk past them the next day. So I think you know, as a similar thing happened at the end of the during the Second World War, which was that we got to know each other fighting the war, and through those connections we saw each other differently and we got a welfare state. And I think that the kind of new forms of relationship that this pandemic has forced upon us will force us to kind of think differently about connection. But I want to say about this is that I think it's very possible to design things, even in cities where people feel quite atomized, that go with the grain of everyday life, that bring people together, even if they wouldn't have thought of it before, as long as it is, and this is where design comes in as well, as long as it's designed in a way that feels natural. I mean, if we ask people, you know, it's a bit like my example of the Prime Minister's voluntary healthcare app. If we design something that just feels like it's run by the state, it doesn't really belong to us, nobody's going to join in. The experience I had with Circle, and with also with the work, I did work on finding people work, which again was very kind of local and relational, mixing up all kinds of people together from different walks of life, but in the same geographic space, and it was phenomenally successful. But the experience I had generally when I went to meet municipalities was that they would look at the data and they would say, oh, well, this is fantastic, we can see how much money this is going to save us, but you know, the problem here is that people don't know each other, so they'll never join in. That was always what people said to us. And then we were always like, where we could build a relationship with the leaders, we were like, would you just let us try? And all I can say is that, you know, I have worked globally in Africa, Latin America, across Europe. The last decade has been here in the UK. I have not found any place where you cannot get over those barriers of apparent atomization. But it is all about the design. It is all about the intent. It's all about how you meet people at the level of the street, at the level of the home, both kind of metaphorically, but also like really in practice in an embodied way, as Ezio is talking about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. We've got two more questions that I'm going to say we'll park them to come back in the panel discussion. We've got a bit more time for discussion over there. I'd like to now, well, thank you both, and then hand over to introduce Lluis Torrens. Lluis is Director of Social Innovation in the Department of Social Rights, Global Justice, Feminism, and LGBTI within Barcelona City Council. He specialized in the fields of applied economy, social and environmental policy. We've had the pleasure to work with him and his team over the last year and a half, including with Ezio and with Julia within the Design for City Making program, where we were looking at caring communities within the context of the city strategy for aging in place. So Lluis, I hand over to you to share the story of Barcelona, a city of superblocks. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you to invite me to this very interesting webinar. I try in 10 minutes to explain what are we doing in Barcelona. We are deploying the social superblocks idea that is a spin-off of the mobility superblocks, and I want to share a presentation. Okay, do you see? Okay, thanks. I have eight slides to explain our idea. This is the first slide. It's about the principles where we are working in our municipality to address care in these times, in this special time. But not only in this time, we have been thinking about how to develop a new system to give the care in the city, and we have these 5 dimensions of the care. The first is the territorial and relational proximity. This is the main, the main issue of this conversation. The second is the integration of social and healthcare service. I am very pleased to introduce after the Trieste experience that it's very related to this item. Third is the community co-responsibility, where it's not only responsibility of the public services. No, is I think that is the idea of Hilary about the new welfare society. The fourth is the adaptability of public space and housing, no, to the public and residential space to the new challenge, no. And fifth, that is an issue very important for us also in Barcelona, that is the feminist perspective, because the caregiving is very biased, no, in terms of gender, no. It's even for the women, no, it's a very low, no, charge for them, no, to take the care of their relative, etc. Which are the precedents of this project? In 2008, we have started the Radars project. That was a project to detect the loneliness of the elderly people in the neighborhoods. We have now almost 60 of the 73 neighborhoods in Barcelona with this project that detects across the neighborhood the people that are suffering this loneliness. In 2016, we have started the first pilot of mobility super block in Pobla Nou. This is an evolution of other projects in the old town neighborhoods, but this is in the Eixample, that is the central district, that is an innovation, no, in the new development of the public space. And in the 1 year later, no, we have developed, the home care service, no, social super blocks. No, we are running 8 pilots in super blocks with more than 500 people attended, and almost 100 professionals working in these 8 pilots. In the next years, we have a forecast to develop between 60 and 120 home care service social super blocks. Which are the main fields of the projects that are related to this? No, we have projects of assistance, no, home care service, teleassistance, Pantxo domicili, that is food at home, programs of prevention, programs of promotion, for example, Vincles BCN, that is a project that was awarded for Bloomberg Foundation, no, to fight against the loneliness also. And we have some programs for caring the caregivers, no, Barcelona Cuida, La Colla Cuidadora, Respire, etc. And we are also developing some projects to early childhood, no, 0 to 2 years, no, to support, no, the child rising, to complement, no, the mandatory educational system. Well, you can see this in these maps, no, the density of Barcelona. We have 1,600,000 people living in Barcelona in 50 square kilometers. No, the overall surface of Barcelona is 100 square kilometers, but the habitat, no, where are the people living, it's only the half, no, 50 kilometers. So we have a very, very high density, no, in red, in the head map, you see in the red areas, more than 800 people using home care service per square kilometer. So this is a very high density. And this allows, no, to create a new organization of the home care service in Barcelona, that is dividing Barcelona in 300 home care service areas, small, very small areas where the time, distance is almost 5 minutes between the dwellings, the homes where the people that are receiving the home care service are living. So that allows to planify and to organize the home care service in a different manner, in the proximity, in a proximity manner. How does it run? A social super block. This is a new way of providing the service, based in the creation of small professional teams which attend to a group of users living in a super block. This is an idea that we have copied from Buurzorg experience in Netherlands, that they are working with teams of 6 to 12 nurses, making the home care service. These systems allows improve the service, because you can divide the service in a small piece of time. For example, you can flexibilize the service of the people that are receiving the home care service. You can reduce the service peaks, so you can reduce also the precariousness of the staff, of the people that are working in the super blocks, and you have a better, much better possibilities, to increase the collaboration between the neighbors and the social super blocks teams, because they are integrated, in the neighborhoods. And we have evolved, this idea, this original idea based only on the home care service super blocks, to a more integral idea that is based on the care super blocks. What is a care super blocks? This is a accumulation of several layers of service that we want to give to the people that are living in any super block, in any care super block. And the idea is the integration of services, the transversality, especially between the social and the healthcare service, that in Spain and Barcelona are separated in different services, different administration, etc. And especially the community revitalization and strengthening of the capabilities of the community, and taking profit also of the digital technology, facilitating the mutual informal support networks, and the appropriation of the public space, that transforming the public space in a aging, age-friendly space or child-friendly space, that is very related to the mobility super blocks. These are some of the lines, of the forthcoming dimensions of the care super blocks activities. Aging, you can see a list of projects that we are starting to integrate in the care super blocks. These are projects that we are working with these projects now in Barcelona, but in a separated manner. Community projects, child rearing, child caring projects, and territory projects. The idea is to integrate all these more than 25 projects in a integrated view. And finally, only to close this very brief presentation of our super blocks, for final thoughts, what are which we are discussing now, in the deployment of the care super blocks. Do we need to create new profiles of care professionals? For example, coordinators, connectors, people that reference, that are new professions or new profiles no, to make successful the super block, which are what are the pros and the cons of implementing new technologies in the field of care. For example, no, can we create a new marketplace, no, to match, no, the demands and the offers of the people that are living in the super block? Which what is the new model of governance that we need for the social organization of care? No, for example, for residents of elderly care, we have committees, no, governance committees with the people that is working in the residence, with the people that are living in the residence, and with the families and the administration. But we do not have any similar governance system for the super blocks. So we need to create some kind of governance, no? And finally, to what extent, no, do we need a cultural change, no, to address the social inequality that are in the care giving, because the public system is not enough, no, to give all the, no, all the necessity of all the needs that the people is demanding, no. And this is very different, no, the results, no, between age, between origin, between income, no. So we need to think about this. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Luis. Thank you for taking us through that incredible story, and also posing some questions at the end, or areas that I know that you and the team are thinking critically about with this model. I want to ask Hilary if you could pop your video back on and join us. As you were listening there, is there a first great question? I'm sure you have many questions, but what would you like to ask Luis?
I mean, I have to say, Luis, that was just like so inspiring. I wish we could just get, I don't know, a millimeter towards that in London, and you could come here. And let's just ask me to ask you one question, and I've got a million questions I want to know. But I guess there's so many questions. The thing that I'm really interested in, well, one of the many strands, is that you have got real radical reorganization happening at every level together in what you described. So you've got, you know, the sort of the municipal level, but you've also got like self-managed teams going inside the care services. I want to ask you how you have managed to organize enough stakeholders within the municipality to get this moving. Like how is it sitting, and how are you enabling things to kind of keep going over now what's quite a long period of time, and getting everybody to kind of, well, we would say in English, sing to the same hymn tune? It seems that you've managed to really create coherence within the bureaucracy to move in one direction.
Well, it's not a easy question. Eh? So we have created first, we have all the power from the general management of the municipality, because we need to converge several departments of the city council. No, for example, we have the responsibility of the home care service, but we have not the responsibility about the health system, because it's a regional responsibility. But we are participating in a consortium with the health authorities in Barcelona. So we are in very strong relationship with them, and to explaining. In fact, they are very happy. They are so happy with this project that they are studying, no, to deploy this idea, no, around the city, but not only in our pilots, but in all the city, no. It's important. I think that it's important to explain which is the aim of the project, because if the people understand that we need to give, I have seen some question in the chat, no? We need to study the continuum between the social and the health care, no, of the people that is living at their homes. And I think that people health authorities and social department authorities, they are. I think that they are realizing the potentiality of this system, because they see that this is, as you have said, this is not about to create savings or not to spend more. No, it's about to give better quality service to the people. No, so I think that this is a very interesting. This is a very interesting approach. Because for us, this is the very richest rightness of the project, to improve the quality not only of the people that are receiving the care, but also for the workers of the home care system, for the nurses, for the doctors that are collaborating with them, etc. So it's important to explain what is the general view, but to have some pilots and some real experience, to have this information.
I think that's so interesting, and it really chimes with my experience, that idea of combining like a very big vision where people can see themselves in, but also enough practice that you can touch, which again is about the neighborhood, because if people can see it and touch it, they trust that the change will be for them rather than just because you're secretly making cost cuts on the side or something. So it was so inspiring. I'm so glad to have had the honor to be able to hear you today.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And maybe just to make a bridge as we wrap up now for the break, Hilary mentioned, and people were asking in the chat about the example from the UK of Shared Lives Plus. And I think one of the aspects of that program is how the professional caregivers are matched with people who require support with mental health issues. And that kind of matching and that kind of autonomy as well between the professional teams is something that the home care teams here in Barcelona, Hilary, also have, in that they're self-organizing. And so I see that ingredient in both examples. And I think that's the connection that you're...
Yes, but what Lluis was talking about sounded much more like the Boortzorg model as well, which many of you might be familiar with and definitely would be worth putting in the chat, which is kind of sort of very radical Dutch organized, self-organized teams. And I think it might have been closer to that model, but both are really inspiring models for this.
Well, we're ready for the break. Thank you, Lluis. Thank you so much, Hilary, as well, to be with us for this first hour. Lots of more questions. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface, but I hope we can circle back and keep you involved as we move forward on this. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to be with you in Barcelona this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you so much.
Okay, now for everyone listening, we're going to have a 5-minute break. Go and grab something refreshing or soothing, and when we come back, we'll be hearing stories from... We're going to be traveling. We're going to be going to Singapore and Italy and to the Netherlands with our next set of speakers. Thank you. Hi everyone. I hope like me you got a drink delivered to your desk. It's a great service. I think we're ready to start with our next set of panelists. Welcome back. And as I said just before the break, we're going to get settled in now and listen to 3 more inspiring stories. These are 3 different examples of communities of care from 3 different countries. So you've been great and active in the chat. Keep it up with your comments and questions coming in there for all the panelists and attendees. We are going to have a panel discussion after this next set of 3 speakers. So we'll have time to touch upon some of your questions and the issues that are surfacing. We're going to start with Singapore and Dr. Wong Sweet Fun, since it is super late for her and she's a superstar for agreeing to be with us tonight so late in her evening. Hi there, Sweet Fun. For those of you, hello. For those of you who don't know, and I see a huge Singapore contingent on the line, so a lot of people who do know you are with us. But for those of you who haven't met Sweet Fun before, she is Chief Transformation Officer and Deputy Chairman, Medical Board for Population Health at Yishun Health, which is part of Singapore's national healthcare group. She leads population health improvement initiatives for the 550,000 residents who are living in the north of Singapore. And today she's going to share with us a story of the Vertical Kampong, an award-winning integrated care neighborhood that brings health and social care services right into the heart of the local community. She'll be reflecting on our topics of care, proximity, and relationships, but importantly, she's going to highlight some of the lessons learned, as well as some of the current challenges that can help us identify potential areas of research exploration. Thank you, Sweet Fun. It's all yours.
Thank you, Lesh. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Thank you for letting us have an opportunity to share the Singapore platform. I'm going to share the vertical kampong that we have in Singapore. We heard a lot about being organized vertically as communities, and in Singapore, 85% of our population are housed in the Housing Development Board apartments, which are really high-rise apartments. And so how do we bring about a caring community when we are organized in such a way? So design is really very important. In Singapore, this is Singapore. It is a lemon-shaped island, and where I work in a healthcare setting is in the north here, which houses about 550,000 people. You see this colorful piece of land here, that's Yishun, okay? And in Yishun, we created 3 wellness kampongs. We have our hospital here, and there are 3 spots in Yishun nearby where we started this wellness kampong for the residents to come together to organize themselves into communities of care. And over the years since 2016, when we started, the number of people joining us have been really increasing steadily. You can see that this heat map of where they come from, they generally walk to the wellness kampong. They live within about 300 to 500 meters to the centers. So you can see the heat map here, where the red color is where more than 10 people living in the block could be visiting the wellness kampong. And then the yellow spots here, fewer, and then of course further green, fewer. And if you look at the pattern, you can see that they don't cross major roads. You see this? They are mainly bound by the, so when we form a boundary of a region where we cater to the needs of the community, we look at the big roads, because I think it's easy to understand that people do not want to cross major roads with high traffic. Yeah, but how does this look like on the ground? What would you see on the ground? So in Singapore, our Housing Development Board really organizes our housing around precincts. Okay, and a precinct would have something like 2,500 to 5,000 people organized into about 5 to 12 blocks. So this is an example of a block of apartments, and this precinct is where people will have this idea of territorial belonging. So they will have their own markets, schools, community sports facilities, all around something like 5 to 12 blocks. And this is a graphical representation of a block. This is how we live in Singapore. Each of this is an apartment, yeah. And down on the ground floor, this is what we call a void deck. And it's called that because that's what it is. It's void. Generally, people walk through it. It's a thoroughfare for people to walk from block to block. And these are community spaces. So in the recent years, the government has been allowing us to experiment with some of these spaces, and we've created a wellness kampong in 3 of these blocks. So each wellness kampong would be about, it's not a big space, about 150 to 180 square meters in area. And in each of down at the void deck, there could be general practitioners, or sometimes in some of them, we could have grocery shops, you know, what we call mama shops on the ground floor. And we created this wellness kampong in 3 of these blocks. And what would the space look like in the design of it? There are 3 types of spaces that we design into a wellness kampong. The first space is that of a common use space where people gather together, and a kitchen, a communal kitchen is a really very good idea to start this off, because people come together with their heritage around eating. Then in this space is what we call a generic space, where there's no furniture, but furniture can be put out or put away depending on how the space is used. So if they're dancing, they will put away the furniture. But if they start to have a calligraphy class, they will put out tables and chairs for use. And then these are what we call enclosed spaces for more private activities. Okay, so that includes even a community nurse post where our nurses from our hospital would go out into the community and see the residents where they are. And of course, around outside, we could start a community garden. So this is what a wellness kampong would look like. And it's really very small. It's small enough for one manager. We will hire a retired person to just have a one bird's eye view of everything that's happening in that space. And so it's very relatable to everyone. And what does it look like? If you see, this is the pavement of the original void deck. And what we have created is a community living room. And that's the communal kitchen there. Chairs and tables which can be tucked away if we needed this space for communities. And if you see, we have made it such that the outside and the inside is it's barrier free. So people can actually stop by if they are passing by and decide if they want to stop and join, or if they didn't want to, they would carry on walking. So the activities that we have there really need to be what we do on a daily basis, you know. So we try to create the consistency of what we call the everyday hello. When we see somebody 3 times a week or every day in the week, we are bound to care for them. And the activities are around what they would normally do together. Communal eating is very much an Asian, and I'm sure it's common in many cultures as well. Yeah. And the activities that we do are not extraordinary. They are really familiar activities. They are cumulative. They are very relevant to the ordinary day, right? Here we have line dancing right in that space next to the communal kitchen, communal gardening, cooking for the women. They love this. And for the men, repairing and upcycling um, um, appliances that or furniture that has giving them a second life, really. So these are people, they know how to do this intuitively. They just come down and join us. And what is the impact? There are three areas of impact. The first one, of course, of relevance to us is health. Here we have a lady, Madam Sim. She was what we call frequent faller. She fell down many times because of a medical illness, and because of that, she was really very scared of going out. She refused to go out, and the only time she went out was when she came to our accident and emergency department or came to the hospital. So in the period before she was introduced to the Wellness Kampung, she really had 12 emergency department visits, resulting in 5 hospital admissions. And then one day, the nurse introduced her to the Wellness Kampung, brought her down, and there she met this neighbor, Selina, who saw her and said, you know, I pass by you quite regularly, but we usually just nod at each other and smile. But hey, would you like me to walk you back later today? And so she walked her home that day from the Wellness Kampung. The next morning, Selina turned up and said, would you like to go down to the Wellness Kampung again? And so it became an everyday affair. Now the two ladies, they go marketing together, they go shopping together, and Madam Sim goes out now. She's not scared anymore. And she brought in her husband, who used to be a farmer, who brought him his friend, who's a farmer again, who brought in another friend who's a Sudoku volunteer, and Selina brought in a friend who cuts hair, who cuts Madam Sim's hair, our nurses. So it became a whole network for Madam Sim, and right now she has an extended support network. She doesn't go to the hospital so much. She has had one emergency department visit so far with an admission, and that was not for a fall, it was for an infection. And currently she is really a lot more resilient. And so building these networks of care happen on an organic basis because there was a bumping space for them at the Wellness Kampung. And so what really thrilled us was that her healthcare utilization really fell after introduction to the Wellness Kampung. And of course, they contribute. They don't just come to take things from the Wellness Kampung. They contribute. They cook. Here we have really good bone soup, high in protein and calcium, that is distributed cooked by them, distributed by them after the residents have had an exercise program, because we know that's the way to build muscles, to build bones. And when they do it together, they build communities, and they actually strengthen their cognitive capacity as well. They visit the vulnerable who are isolated at home. And this was a very interesting work that we did with an arts agency. They created an arts installation where people could start talking about death, preparing for death. It is such a difficult topic to bring up, but it is so much importance to it, preparing to go. And because once you know how you want to go, you will know how you want to live. So this was an amazing arts installation and community ground up event that happened in the community. And you see that they start to care for each other, and it's in simple things like wellness, the daily exercise. can you imagine it? They do 1 hour of exercise every day for 5 days in a week. That's a lot more than what I am doing personally myself. They do that and they encourage each other. These are our 4 cover girls. There are 4 ladies, all caring for each other. They are not well people. They are frail. For example, our auntie here broke an arm just bumping into another person in the crowd. This auntie here has heart disease. This lady was losing weight and they found that there was no one to cook for her at home. So they brought her into our Share a Pot, which is this program. And this lady has dementia. She's the leader of the group. Our dementia specialist would never believe that she's leading the whole group. They call her the big sister. And with that, they come down to the wellness kampung on a daily basis to support each other. None of them have been admitted to the hospital. And when we held community training programs to build their capability to look after each other. For example, this activity of learning how to transfer a person without causing skin problems. They all came down. They traveled by bus to the training site just to learn how to do it because they said, I never know if my neighbor needs it. And then if I really offer that care, I wouldn't injure the skin. So really looking out for each other. I don't know if I have time to show this video. Do I have, Lesh?
I'm afraid not, but one thing
Okay, I'm going to stop it then.
we could run it at the very end for people because there's a lot of questions actually to try from people to ask what is it like inside the kampong. So could we keep it and maybe play
Yes, we can do that.
Thank
yes,
you so
and
much.
right, and I'd like to hear what Rotterdam has to say as well. So yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry.
So
Thank you.
was great fun. Thanks. And indeed, next we have Miriam Van Rein, who's joining us from Rotterdam. Welcome, Miriam. Hi, there you are.
Hi.
We're going to switch now then from considering caring community for elderly in Singapore to thinking about families in the Netherlands. Let me just introduce you. So Miriam is a mom of 3. She lives in Delfshaven, which is a neighborhood of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And she's initiated several projects and programs that are creating equal opportunities for kids in one of the poorest postcode districts in the country. So thanks for sharing with us the story of Team Toekomst. This is actually very interesting. I just want to frame it very quickly that for people that this falls under the Resilient BOTU 2028 initiative of the city. So it links to the Resilient Cities program in Rotterdam, but it's a bottom-up community-driven initiative. And I think it will demonstrate really the power that we've been listening to that hides inside communities that can be leveraged to transform their care. So I'm handing over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lekshmy, for introducing us. Not only me, but Saida from our team is listening too. And at the end of my presentation, I would love to give her a minute to share some stories on her work as a link worker. My name is Miriam Van Rein, and I'm indeed a mother, co-founder of Team Toekomst. I first want to share some slides about where our intervention is focused on. It's a neighborhood in Delfshaven. It's called Bospolder Tussendijken. And Bospolder Tussendijken is one of the poorest in the country. I can make it a better story, but it isn't. And it has been for decades. It's a neighborhood where lots of people have debts. It's a very dense neighborhood. So you can see there, lots of bricks and a few outdoor spaces. And what especially is something I have to tell is that residents rate their quality of life lower than anywhere else in Rotterdam. And but there's also good news, because Delfshaven and Bospolder Tussendijken, those are neighborhoods where there's lots of social activity. So there are lots of facilities. There are good schools. There are some sports activities, and there's a community that takes care of one another. So there are lots of problems on one hand, on one side, but on the other side, there are lots of people in the community that want to make an effort to change. There's a call. Now I'm out of my story. Sorry for that. And therefore, the local government enabled the program. It's called Resilient BOTU. BOTU is Bosbol Tussendijk 2028, with an ambition to make BOTU the first resilient district of Rotterdam in 2028. And Rotterdam is one of the cities in the global resilience program. And in this neighborhood, it can be done because there is lots of social activity. And one of the programs within the Resilient BOTU is Social Impact by Design. And Social Impact by Design, it's a competition for citizens in the neighborhood to come with new plans. An open call in which every citizen of the neighborhood could say, I've got a good idea for my neighborhood, and I want to work on that project. And there are lots of companies named in the sheets that are not doing the project themselves, but they're here to facilitate those inhabitants that come up with the plan. So the Social Impact by Design was like a really interesting open call. It was of 3 topics. 3 topics that really needed an innovation. The first one was healthcare. So that's our, so we made our bet on that topic. Team Toekomst is Team Future in English. The second one was work, language and depth. And the third one was on energy. And why did we start it? Why did we start with this open call? Like Lekshmy said, I'm a mother of 3. I live in a neighborhood. I organize lots of sports organizations as a volunteer in my neighborhood. And there are lots of pilots and projects in our neighborhood. There are lots of people that want to change the situation of the kids in our neighborhood. The local government does, organizations do, but there is lack of impact for these children. If you see the small, how do you say that, graphic, there are every year, and that's been going on for decades, more children grow up in poverty with less equal chances. More pilots, less impact. And I saw that as a mother. And this first hour, we talked about proximity. And I can show you where Delfshaven is and on the scale of Rotterdam. But proximity to our intervention is that it's our neighborhood. It's our children growing up in our neighborhood. And we see lots of money being invested in our neighborhood, not reaching these children. And we said we stop this. A new sustainable intervention is needed. And we went searching for an intervention that already was proven because it's about children. So what you create has to work. And we found an intervention from West London. It's called the West London Zone. And we could get their intervention. In West London, there was a mother too that said, now it's enough. I'm going to take control of the equality for children in my neighborhood. And she's been doing that really well. I can say that in the chat later on, but visit that side of the West London Zone. It's beautiful. And we have gotten all the information from the West London Zone and made our own zone, the Team Toekomst. And it's a collective impact approach. So what we do, together with the schools, but that's interesting, on the former slide, I said there's no steering power for schools. All the kids go to school. The schools see all the problems, but they couldn't do anything about it. Out of school. Inside school they can, but out of school they couldn't. And what we do, we collaborate with schools. And with the schools, we say, which are the kids that really need an intervention, that can reach their talents, but somehow they can't at the moment because of the family situation, because they don't have a bike, they don't have the money, the mother has got too much to do to bring the kids to the football, whatever. Which are these kids and how can we help them? So it's a structured approach we started. And then when we know which kids, we have a long-term program for them. So 2 years. For 2 years, where are their link workers? And we are trusted adults in the family, and we help the family to create those equal opportunities for their kids. And that's about a lot of things. I will ask Sida later to say something about the things we help with. But through the period of 2 years, we really help the families get into a new routine in which the child can really develop its talents. What we also do, and you see that on the right side, it's all Dutch, but there are lots of organizations, resources in our neighborhood that are there, but lots of kids can't reach them. So I'm a volunteer in a few of those organizations. And despite all the things we organize at the sports club to get every child to a sports club, we can't get every child. There's too many problems for lots of families to give their kids the opportunities other kids can have. So what we do, we bring together all these organizations and we strengthen them. So together we make sure more kids can join their organizations. And to show that we can be successful and that it's not a new pilot, a short thing without impact, we monitor the impact on every child. And we do that at social-emotional skills, self-efficacy, the development of positive relationships, social capital, and progress at school. Every child, every year, and they have to make progress. Otherwise, we'll stop, because then we're one of these pilots. We already started the last couple of decades in our neighborhood. So that's the core of the program, the 2 years of helping these kids. Now it's community-based.
Miriam, sorry to interrupt, but we have 1 more minute just to be able to keep the panel discussion in. Sorry to rush you.
Yes. Oh, 1 slide back is because it's community-based. It consists of mothers from our community, but they are really experienced. One of them, Sida, has been a police officer. Our link workers are from school administrations. They have worked in social work for decades, but they saw they couldn't do enough on the equality of the kids. Otherwise, I'm a fund manager, an investment fund manager, so I'm about the data and the business case, etc. Jan Willem is a data-driven. So in our neighborhood, all these competencies are there to create an intervention that we hope can work in our neighborhood. Thank you for the time. Is it possible that Sida can, or?
Yes, just say a few words. We were also dying to hear from her. Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
If you want to add one thing to the story, just so that we hear your point of view, it would be lovely.
Hello. What can I say? Yeah, we work with mothers because we want to be that they know there's always someone in the neighborhood. We do everything with the families. We also sometimes, when they really need help, we go to their homes to give them tools, what they need to help their children, because sometimes the parents don't know which way they have to choose or where they can go, and we help them with that. It's a lot to tell, but I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for being with us and for bringing this story, both from both your perspectives. And yeah, I think it's a wonderful example of mobilizing bottom up, to get the system to change. So now with that, I would like to invite our last speaker. Pantxo, are you with us? Let me introduce you for everyone as you turn on your camera. Pantxo is a researcher and activist. He's working at the Documentation Center Oltre il Giardino, Beyond the Garden in Trieste, in Italy. He's a member of Entrar Afuera and Conferenza Passaglia. And this afternoon, he's going to tell us the story of Micro Areas project that's been evolving and sharing a lot of learnings in between Barcelona Superblocks and the Micro Areas Trieste. He will talk to us, of course, about care as it's considered in that context. And interestingly here, the role that institutions can play, the new roles they can play in the ecosystem between service users and care systems. So over to you.
Thank you. I just want to check if I do like this, you see my note or you see the PowerPoint?
We see the PowerPoint. We don't see your notes. You're okay.
Okay. Hopefully, I will be able. Well, thank you first of all to all of you for organizing it, to Julia, Lesh, Airi, and to Lluis and Tia to involve me in this interesting conversation. There are a number of words that are really resonating with my experience here in Trieste and with the work I'm trying to do with many people here in Trieste. And the history in Trieste is long, is a 50 years long story to put institution into crisis. It starts in the mental health asylum of Trieste by closing it for the first time in the history of Europe. And Franco Basaglia, the founder of this movement, who was the director of the mental health of the asylum, of the psychiatric asylum, used to say that we have to put illness in parentheses, that we have to take care of the mental health of a territory, of a community, of the caring and the wealth of a community. In a sense, what Basaglia was saying is that we need to have social services that are dealing with people and not people that have to be fitted to fit in the social services. 50 years later, I want to talk to you about a story that, in a sense, tried to work again on this idea. Because in order to close the asylum, the reorganization was to dissolve the diagnosis, separation, and reorganize the same asylum that was organized in pavilions by neighborhoods, so that everybody could then be supported once out of the asylum in their territories. If we move to 2009, I want to talk to you about a short story. It's the story of Mr. Walt. Mr. Walt is a person with a difficult situation, what's called complex needs for example, in mental health. So he wasn't part of any particular services. He had the diabetes, but the diabetes was not difficult enough to require an intervention of healthcare. He was sad and in a difficult moment of his life, but this was not enough to be in charge to mental health. His situation in terms of income was difficult, but he wouldn't be supported by social services. What happened then is that we have clearly some problems. The first problem is that the person, as a patient, is a passive object of services. And second, that we see how the competence of each service is in crisis then when there is not roles that are interconnecting this condition. At the end of the day, we are in a situation in which there is an institutional inertia, and there is therefore a person that is stuck with problems. Here, there is a difference in this situation, because the situation takes place in a neighborhood where there is a service, or better said, a device, as we try to call it, that is called Habitat Microarea. Habitat Microarea is a set of intervention in several vulnerable urban spaces of Trieste. We talk about 10% of the city, in which healthcare services, municipal social services, housing public company, mental health care services, etc., intersect and involve local and social networks in designing and delivering public care policies on the very local level. Each microarea is a network of care that involves, or a mesh of care, I would say, using the word that Enzo was using at the beginning of the session, is a mesh of care that involves a population of about 2,000 people. But it is also a space, a small apartment, normally on the street level, where a range of activities take place. Social and cultural collective practices and services, such as home visits, checkups, public health session, and so on. And it's a set of intervention that touches around 30 to 50% of the people that lives in this small area. So this space is a space open 5 or 6 days a week, in which there is a core working group of the micro area that is composed by 3 to 6 people coming from public workers or third sector workers who work different schedules. So they cover all the pieces and bits of the day, and but also a number of volunteers who take care of activities that are not directly a duty of the public institution. There is always an attention here of delivering a public institutional service, but also allow people to use the same facilities, the same instruments, the same resources in order to replicate and enrich the capacity of the community of taking care of herself. In a sense, it's not just a caring community, but is a public investment to support a community of care. And so on the top of the volunteers, there is a variable numbers of inhabitants who both participate or also organize activities. What happens if we go back to the story of Mr. Walt? When he is in a macro area, even if there is not a direct service that is in charge of him, it is the macro area work group that starts to connect mental health, community care, health district, and the public housing company, and the social networks, and re-involve the family, etc., in order to construct, to build a system, an ecology of care that can give back a dignity of life. A dignity of life and death, as some Sweet Fan was saying before, through a number of activities and connections. So it is about personalizing care, but also activating different levels of institutional response, and at the same time to connect Walt to a number of community intervention that the micro area in the first place was able to guarantee. So we see a number of things: the importance of context, the fact that the poverty of realities is also a richness of possibility if we invest on communities, is a mesh of practices, of institutional practices, and this taking charge of gravitational fields. Let me be more clear and push just quickly some keywords of what I mean, relating to the 3 keywords that the working group from Barcelona was proposing to me. First, the question of care. We have here the territory of a micro area where a number of interventions have been done. This is before the micro area started. So we have to understand that there is a singularity of care. There is a singularity of each one of us, of each condition of care. We cannot think that people fit in services. It's services that have to be flexible and work around and along people. Second, the context of life is a possibility that the public services must invest on. And third, this means to move from a concept of a patient as a passive experience to a concept of emancipation, a standing person, a citizen in need. Second is a matter of proximity. The micro area is us, tells the banner on the back of this group of people. And so we have to constitute and guarantee a continuity of care. What means a continuity? A continuity among the institutions. The fact that the institutions speak to each other is not the citizen that needs to find its way, it's the services that needs to coordinate, but also continuity of care. The micro area is always there to produce a bottom-up advocacy, to be with the citizen in order to take responsibility and not only to talk about a competence. And finally, it's a matter of relations. The relation is not just, which is super important, the possibility of being with the people and build relationship in the communities. The micro area goal, however, is also to produce this interinstitutional mesh and move this network of institutions in the communities, along and with the people, because if we don't do this, the transformation that we build cannot be durable. Just to have 1 minute, I think that this is what we are trying to do with also in our work with Barcelona, trying to exchange and understand in the concrete practices how we can work better and continue these experiments of care.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pantxo. Thank you. And I'd like to invite all of our speakers back their videos on. We have some time left to still have a debate amongst us. There have been tons of interesting questions coming up in the chat. Nuria and Julia and Heidi have been watching that. I'm going to hand over to Julia now to lead us through this next part. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, everyone. I am not sure I'm going to be, I'm afraid I'm not going to be just to all the good questions we had. But I hope that at least we were able to gather some of the themes, the main themes that we've been seeing here. One that I think was very prominent, both in the questions as well as in the speakers' shares, is this tension between government responsibility and this efficacy that we are seeing with community-owned initiatives. No, when do the government-led initiatives need to stop, or how far it should go, and where should the community just run the show? So we had a lot of questions about that, and also this links with some questions about continuity and knowledge transfer between healthcare and social care services, between different silos within the government, and how the silos are not really representing what is going on the ground. So Lesh, I'm not sure if we have any time for some of the speakers to respond to it, or should we just talk about the big themes that showed up?
I wonder if there's one speaker who wants to grab this or comment on it. So this idea of where do institutions let go, where do grassroots organizations pick up? I think it relates to this co-responsibility. Does anyone want to make a comment on that? And then I think we should go to the overarching themes.
I could give a comment to that, because that's something I think we all, that phone is ringing again. What we see in Elisava is that when we start, people like it. Government gives a little bit of innovation money, and well, once you grow, there become tensions. And the thing we do, I'm not sure if it will work out, but that's the thing we believe in. We're going to show the impacts that we're creating, and if we show that every child in our program makes much more progress than it would do otherwise, then there can't be any mistake that we should get more funds from local governments. And we discussed that. So from the beginnings of our intervention, that was the nice thing about social impact by design. It's something I could advise to every city. The government was part of that. So the intervention, the data model, it was all in collaboration. And hopefully, by showing the impact we create, we have the title to have this conversation and stop having the tensions, but start being the social welfare organization in our neighborhood.
Awesome, thank you, Miriam. Yeah, and so with also seeing like also on this topic, and I think Miriam was also talking about that, the need for program sustainability in the neighborhood level as well. So this has been also a theme, I think, throughout, and this speaks to financing and sponsorship, right? Like there was some questions about how to get these initiatives to survive. Now, these initiatives that started on the grassroots level to survive the pandemic and continue thriving when the crisis is gone. And this also speaks with this theme of sustainability. On this, I think also it's worth mentioning for all of us who are interested in researching this topic, all of us who are doing research and implementation of that here in Europe, that the Horizons Europe program is now starting a new round, and they have a specific theme on promoting citizens to become agents of change through bottom-up initiatives and innovations through new forms of governance. So this is really interesting, and we are really excited to start thinking about how might we collaborate with research grants that are exploring this theme. So also, if anyone who are working as researchers and on the city level are interested in this theme, I think it would be very interesting to start a conversation on the chat. So please leave your comments as well. Yeah, and I think we've also seen, like, we've been talking so much about the social determinants of health and how important it is to have these blurred lines between health, social and healthcare. But we see that this is still a struggle, and there were so many questions about that, right? So this is also a theme that I think I've seen. And of course, urban planning and new models of neighborhood-led care, like it's all the potential that there is when we bring these two things together that in principle don't seem quite linked, but they definitely are. And like good urban planning, as we saw, could really foment grassroots initiatives that lead to more caring communities. I don't know, Lesh, if you have any other themes and thoughts that you were able to also grasp as you were leading this session.
I think something that Hilary mentioned, but that came back in several of the stories in this second session is when we saw the Singapore kampong, but also in Trieste, the way Pantxo described, and Miriam and Saida, their neighborhood, is really looking at the ways in which we create these meeting points at a neighborhood scale. So how do we consciously design meeting points within the public space? And I think that links very strongly to one track of research that we've been looking at, between Elisava and ourselves and with Luis's team, but those interventions on an urban scale, like the benches to get together and sit around, or the void deck spaces that Sweet Fun shared with us. And I think that's a very important layer to think about in terms of urban design, as well as the services that then build the relationships that we've been talking about. I don't know if any of I want to just offer, Ezio, I was about to call out to you.
At what time have we to finish?
Oh, it's terrible. We have 6 minutes. It's horrible.
Okay.
Not enough time.
I would say 1 minute, one minute thing. And I would like to say something building on what Julia was saying at the end of this small talk. And our not so hidden agenda for this webinar is to better clarify some ideas to create more defined research question. And we would like to arrive to find some ideas, and with these ideas to find some way to develop a program, a proposal, a research proposal. And so this is very important for us to try to also to reformulate our discussion in a way that could be a research question. In this case, the research question moved from this issue about proximity. And I would only to give one idea. I think that more or less we all agree that there could be a optimal condition in which you have a place, could be a city, but could be a big city, but could be also a small city or whatever, where you have a certain kind of density. Density do not mean the people to be dense, but the people has a lot of interactions, and a very important diversity. And I will not go on, but there was some example in Hilary's presentation that show very clearly how it's different if you have a group of people that can do something together, if they are all similar, with all the disadvantage to be all similar, or if they are very diverse, that have several motivation from the social to the practical to the political motivation to say we should move toward dense conditions where you have diversity of people with diversity of things that are together in doing some project together. So the project, this community are project-based, and the project is the one that keep together people that should be very diverse. So what I want to say to conclude is we can have a kind of model of what in principle we would like to have, this caring community in some ecological environment that permit them to live in diversity. And afterward, we can start from different point of view, because no one can create this model altogether. The strategy is to move from where you are, from the strength that case by case you can have, but knowing the direction in which we have to go. So this is my proposal. So for the beginning, we cannot imagine that we break all the silos at once, because it will be too complicated. But we can start from people with some problems or some motivation, not necessarily problem. That could be the child, it could be the elderly, it could be the people with some mental health, it could be some other. And from here to know that we want to go in a direction in which progressively we organize around this first core group, many others with the idea of going like that. And maybe the research could be to try to see how moving from different starting point, we can make some effort to converge in some more complete model in which you have density, diversity, care, and all the other kind of services that we can find. And by this point of view, the idea of the city of proximity could be a good idea, because it's proximity is not only traffic, is not only caring, is not only elderly, it's proximity. And just to finish, proximity is so good because it gives back, it has several motivations, but one of the motivations that has not been mentioned today is that it gives back time to people. Because if we take seriously proximity means that also you can rediscuss the work and bring back work in the neighborhoods. So if you have the services that are near, the friends that are near, the work that is near, this means to give back to people hours and hours of precious time that could be used to have time to take care of something. So this is my proposal, to work on this idea and to try to see who could be interested to put together the energy to propose some kind of research.
Thank you, Ezio. Speaking of time, in the last minutes, we would like to invite each of the speakers just to say one closing statement about how you feel on this discussion and one takeaway, I guess, that you have. I have a feeling that we connected a community here this evening in Singapore, and we will be keeping in touch, because I think as Ezio describes these different experiments, it would be incredible to think that we could try out things in different places, but keep talking to one another in order to learn from one another and move forward. So I will close now, but I will ask maybe Lluis, if you could start us off with just a quick round of closing statements, would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the webinar. It has been really very interesting, and to know about the other experience in Rotterdam and in Singapore. I think that the super blogs or the other experience, they are about how to transform the liabilities in assets. No, in terms, I am economist. No, I am working with assets and liabilities, and how to passive, no, the needs of the people in active for the community. No, so I have loved more the slide of the network or relationships in Singapore, where every people, no, can do something for the other people. No, so for me it's very no, illustrative, no, of the sense of the community of care, no, where all the people are working each other, no, to take care of their neighborhoods or their relative, etc. And so, thank you very much.
Thank you. Miriam, would you like to go next?
Yes. I was really interested when Hilary Cotton said something about welfare services no longer a service. And she talked about putting relationships up front. And I heard a lot about this new, if you do that, there are new persons needed. Connectors, link workers. We saw that in all our presentations. And those are the neighbors those are the citizens. So I think it's, those two are, I think, really interesting to work on together.
Thank you. Sweet fun.
I'd like to say two things. One is that we may have started from different points, but I think we are all coming together into the same space. And eventually this is what life is. It starts from the day we enter the world, and it will end the day we leave the world. From a professional point of view, my biggest takeaway actually is for caring communities to really survive. We as professionals have to stop technicalizing care. Yes, care is care. It is something you give to someone. There is no technique to it. And for a lot of professionals, we put technique into it and we make judgments about whether it's good enough, it's right, or it's wrong. So that's where I think we will break up communities if we technicalize it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Pantxo?
Yes, thank you. It was super interesting to be with you, and I think that in our work we are always trying to understand how we make our institution more and more close, more and proximity needs to be a permanent practice of transformation in institutions. We cannot think institutions to be something that are naturally close to the people. The problem is that we have to continuously force institutions to be close to the people. I work in the third sector and I'm pulling all the time. And to be with you, it's a possibility of finding somebody to talk, to think through. I think that in order to pull them down, we need to discuss, we need to find experiments, share, and learn new ways, because every day we have to learn a new strategy to pull institutions down to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. We can support one another for sure. We need collective energy for this. I don't know, Saida, would you like to say a closing statement too?
Yes, I saw at Sweet Fun the organic grow. I think if you work with people, you see the system is gonna grow organic, because how Sweet Fun say, the care is people are care, not technology. So I think if you help each other, it grows. I see that now, and I see it also on the program in Singapore. Nice to see you all, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Oh, we draw to a close. I want to just ask Nuria to very, very quickly flash the Miro panel that we've been working. It looks kind of crazy, but we're going to work on it afterwards. Don't worry for that. So it has all of the takeaways, at least there was a lot of learnings from all the presentations and sharing. And over there on the right is where we have some of the bigger themes in yellow, and we have some of the specific questions. We also want to go back into the chat and Q&A because there was a lot of really rich and provocative conversations running there too. So let us take a look at that, reflect on that, and come back to you all with maybe some of the main takeaways from our afternoon, evening together, so we can keep the conversation running. Thank you so much for being with us. It was awesome. I loved it. Thank you for your time and your care. And thanks to the team for this being a very smooth operation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for all of your work.
You're welcome. It was fun.
Bye.
Bye.